Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Cameras and Coffee. And in today's video, I'm going to bring you up to speed on the demo roll of film that Lomography sent me however many months ago. It took me way longer to shoot than it should have, quite frankly. That is very, very hot today. Ooh, okay. So, some of you might remember in one of my previous Cameras and Coffees, I talked about Lomography sending me a 36 exposure roll of 35 millimeter Fantome A7S II film as one of the people they were reaching out to test the film, to get sample shots for marketing and things like that. So I finished it, got the scans got it developed on Saturday, scanned and edited that day, and sent it back to Lomography. I developed it in Rodinal plus 50 for 8 minutes. Great results. So when you have a slow speed film, it's generally really high contrast. And Rodinal worked really well for it because it added a little bit of grain. No big deal. It actually just enhanced the look. Also, because it was a dilute plus 50, it was a slightly lower contrast mix than like a plus 25. So the overall results were relatively low contrast. And I was really happy with them. So there was, I tried lots of different stuff: portraits, landscapes, different lighting conditions, things like that. And every type of photo I took returned results that I was pleased with. So not every photo was good, but every type of photo had something that didn't disappoint. The film itself was outstanding. So it is very slow at 8 ISO. I shot it at 6. Oh, sorry, Steinbeck, that was some static right there, right on your ear. I'm sorry, pupper. I shot it at 6 ISO and developed it normally. I find that with slower speed films, throwing a little bit more light at them causes the contrast to be reduced a little bit because you're getting a slightly thicker negative. And with high contrast films like the Fantome A7S, which has a clear base, that additional contrast reduction can help control what can be a fairly harsh contrast. So at any rate, it's really nice. It developed beautifully. The images were really easy to scan. They didn't have a whole lot of dust and dirt on them. The first 6 or 8 frames had little pieces of felt on them from the cassette, but after that, and then about the first again half dozen frames had a series of parallel lines on them, clearly scratches from something. I don't know what. It went away after a handful of frames. So there was probably something to do with the cassette, something going on with the cassette and that rectified itself. So honestly, small things, those little lines, I wouldn't say almost all. A significant amount of film that you use will actually have flaws on the negatives from things like scratches from going through the cameras or coming out of the cassette or whatever. But the film is dense enough that it doesn't show up. So thinner negatives, ones that are underexposed or underdeveloped, tend to show those flaws a little bit more. And also the first handful of photos that I took with the film were a little bit underexposed. So that's another thing to make sure of. If you try this film or any slow film in general, make sure your exposures are spot on, because if you underexpose or underdevelop, your results are going to suffer way, way, way more than they do with a medium or fast speed film. Shooting slow speed like an 8 ISO is a very interesting experience if you've never done it. Not every camera can go that low on its light meter. I used my Olympus OM4, which goes down to ISO 6, and that's what I set it at. If you are using a camera that has an ISO that only goes down to 25, then you need to manually compensate your exposure settings, 12 and 6, 2 stops. So it's a different experience. Almost every shot that I took was with a tripod, except for some that were done at f1.2. The only two lenses I used were a 55mm f1.2 and a 24mm f2.8. Beyond f2, hand holding was out of the question. Even at f2, I had some exposures where that were handheld that were too shaky to even bother working with. So with slow film, tripods are great. Slow films like Fantome A7S II are not going to be sports films, but landscapes where you want to capture cloud trails or waterfalls, things like that, fantastic. The portraits from the Fantome A7S II were incredible. I was very, very pleased with the image character coming out and the way that it reproduced skin tones and things like that. So overall, really positive experience. And if you've seen some of my film reviews, you'll know that some of Lomography's films I'm a little bit lukewarm on. This is not one of them. It was very, very nice to shoot. So slow films that I use regularly include ADOX CMS-22, RPX-25. You could include Ilford 50. I've shot a lot of that in the slow film, and now the Fantome A7S II. Oh, and Kodak 2383, which is an interpositive film that developed as T-Max, is rated at 1.6 ISO. It's so incredibly hard to use. But slow films are really nice in their image results in that you get very little grain. And if you can control the contrast, you can get really nice tonality. So at some point when I do start shooting the Fantome A7S II for an all-about film video, I want to see if I can figure out a good ADOX Adotech 4 time for it, because I think that film would pair beautifully with the Adotech developer. They gave me times for Ilfosol 3, Rodinal, D96, and a couple of others. I don't recall what they were. I think they had 5 or 6 different ones to choose from. And Rodinal was the only chemistry that I had on hand to use. And it was the second best. There was one other developer, I think it might have been D96, that I looked at and said, if I had that, I would use it, because the sample photos that Lomography provided with their developing times, I think it was D96 really looked the best. Some of them, like Ilfosol 3, super high contrast, where skin tones were just completely bleached. And that's not a result that I was looking for. So at any rate, digitizing it digitized really easily. The Rodinal gave it just enough grain that I could zoom in on live view to times 10 and see the clumps of grain. So basically, when you digitize film with a DSLR, you use live view, zoom in as far as you can, and then use it like a grain focuser to fine-tune your focus. And I think had I used something with a lower grain result than the Rodinal, that would have been a lot harder. But the Rodinal allowed me to do that and just imparted a really nice image characteristic. So at any rate, acknowledging that they gave me that roll for free, acknowledging, of course, that it was no strings attached. It is a fine film. I enjoyed it a lot. And by fine, that's a complimentary. It's a good film. It's not easy to use. You're not going to carry this around your neck and be shooting at f/16 with it. It's a specialist film for certain circumstances, but not all. And overall, if you can shoot within the window of quality results that this film will give you, then you're going to be in a pretty good place for using it. So, what would I like to see from Lomography for this film if they continue to make it and market it? More developer times, more developer dilution times. So they had Rodinal plus 50. I'd be curious what it would look like at Rodinal plus 75. I'd really be interested in developing this with Microdoll X, or Legacy Pro Mic X is the current version of that. I think in Microdoll X, this film could be a really awesome film, especially at +3, D76 plus 5, I think, would be a really interesting combination with this film as well. Rodinal 23 plus 100, another combination that could be really promising for this. So, and of course, Adotech and ADOX Silvermax film developer, I think would also be really good with this film at the right concentration and time. Like a Silvermax developer plus 29 would probably pair well with this film. Those are just guesses, not having tried any of them, based on how those developer combinations work with other films, multiple different other types of films. The other thing I'd really like from this film would be 120. And I think that shooting this in medium format would be a sublime experience because there'd be functionally no grain in the images. And if you could probably blow up a medium format image from this stock to a significant enlargement factor without getting detectable grain at all from any sort of reasonable viewing distance for that print. So roll film for this would be a very, very nice thing to have. Of course, I know it'd be a pipe dream, but getting sheet film out of Lomography, because Lomography I don't think makes any sheet film. But if this were available in 4x5, in a heartbeat, I would shoot this in 4x5. Contact prints from this in 4x5 would be mesmerizing, to say the least. So suffice to say, I'm a fan of this stock. I'm really looking forward to getting it in the queue for the All About Film series. Hoping I have a job tomorrow and can start buying film again. And if so, then we'll get that in the queue and we'll get an All About Film made about that fairly quickly. So, well, quickly by my standards, which is not quickly by anyone else's standards. So at any rate, that's the quick and dirty. That's the not quick and dirty. I'm never quick about these things. Anyway, that's the rundown of where I am right now with the Fantome A7S II. And I hope you enjoyed some of the sample photos that I played during this video, demonstrating how the film behaves and what how it looks. So fingers crossed. Lomography, I hope, also likes some of those images and is able and willing to use them in their marketing. That would be the absolute highlight of my year, to say the least. Right, Steinbeck? You don't care. You just want your belly rubbed. You don't want photos taken. You just want belly rubs. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and I'll see you in the next Cameras and Coffee. Time to get up, pupper. Come on. Oh, you want a kiss? Oh, you're a good boy. Yes, you are. I know. I gotta get up.